10 weapons, 1 war. Some changed a battlefield, 1 changed humanity. This is every major weapon of World War II ranked from the weapon the world outgrew to the weapon that changed humanity forever. And the weapon at number 1 wasn't a tank. It wasn't a fighter plane. It was something that ended 140,000 lives in a single morning. Stay with me. Number 10, the bolt-action rifle. It was the weapon every soldier carried into the war, and by the end of it, every army was trying to replace it. The bolt-action rifle, the Kar 98K, the Lee Enfield, the Mosin Nagant, was the backbone of every infantry division in 1939. Accurate, reliable, proven in the last war. The problem was, the last war ended in 1918. To fire a second shot, a soldier had to physically cycle a metal bolt, lift, pull back, push forward, lock. In the time it took to do that, an enemy with a semi-automatic rifle had already fired 3 more rounds. Against most enemies in 1939, it was enough. Against an American squad in 1944, it was a death sentence. But here is what the bolt action could do that nothing else on this list could. At Stalingrad, Soviet sniper Vasily Zaitsev used a standard Mosin Nagant to record 225 confirmed kills in 5 weeks, not with a specialized weapon, with the same rifle issued to every Soviet infantryman. 1 man, 1 standard rifle. A German officer corps terrified enough to fly in their best sniper from Berlin to stop him. The bolt action sits at number 10 not because it was a bad weapon. It was the weapon that defined an entire generation of warfare. But by 1945, the world had moved past it, and the weapons that replaced it were capable of things it could never imagine. Number 9, the submachine gun. The bolt-action rifle was built for open fields. The submachine gun was built for what happened when the fields ran out. By 1942, the war had moved indoors. Stalingrad's factory floors, the alleys of Casino, the hedgerows of Normandy. A rifle's range advantage meant nothing. What mattered was how fast you could fill a small space with lead, the Thompson, the MP-40, and above all, the Soviet PPSH-41. The PPSH fired 900 rounds per minute from a 71-round drum magazine. In the house-to-house fighting of Stalingrad, Soviet soldiers would clear a room and move to the next before the sound of the first burst had finished echoing. A German officer who survived Stalingrad wrote in his diary that encountering a PPSH in a doorway was the last sound many of my men ever heard. The submachine gun sits at 9 because it solved one problem and created another. Brilliant at 50 meters. Irrelevant at 300 meters. Number 8 fixed that, with the same rifle every soldier already carried. Number 8, the semi-automatic rifle. In 1944, a German soldier and an American soldier could stand 200 meters apart and fire at each other. The German fired 10 aimed shots per minute. The American fired 30. The M1 Garand was the only standard-issue semi-automatic rifle fielded by any major power in World War II. Gas-operated, 8 rounds, no manual cycling. With every pull of the trigger, a new round was chambered automatically. General George Patton called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. He wasn't wrong. At Normandy, American squads suppressed German positions that outnumbered them 3-1. Not because American soldiers were better shots, but because every single rifleman in a US squad could put down fire like a machine gun team. The firepower disparity was so severe that German infantry officers specifically requested machine gun support whenever they expected to face American units. One design decision, gas operation instead of bolt cycling, rewrote infantry tactics for every army that witnessed it. The bolt action was outgrown. The submachine gun was outranged. The semi-automatic had no such weakness. But individual firepower only takes you so far. To change the war, you needed to kill something a rifle could never touch. Number 7, anti-tank weapons. In 1940, a tank was effectively invincible to individual soldiers. By 1944, a single man with a tube on his shoulder could destroy one from a foxhole. The American bazooka and the German Panzerfaust introduced shape-charge technology to infantry combat. Instead of punching through armor with kinetic energy, these weapons focused a jet of molten copper that burned through steel like a torch through tin. The Panzerfaust weighed 13 pounds and cost almost nothing to manufacture. The tank it could destroy cost millions. Tank commanders who had previously driven through infantry with impunity suddenly had to wait for their own infantry to clear every basement, every ditch before moving. At Panzerfaust range, every infantryman became a tank killer. The armor that won France in 6 weeks could no longer advance alone. But while infantry was learning to kill tanks, the Germans had a weapon that was killing infantry faster than anything else on this list. Number 6. The General Purpose Machine Gun. Some weapons are loud. The MG42 was an event. Germany's General Purpose Machine Gun fired 1,200 to 1,500 rounds per minute. At that rate, individual shots blurred into a single continuous mechanical shriek that Allied soldiers described as a sound unlike anything they had ever heard. The US Army produced training films specifically to prevent soldiers from freezing when they heard it for the first time. At Omaha Beach, a single MG42 crew fired for 9 hours. The casualty estimates for that one position run into the hundreds. But the MG42's true power wasn't the kill count. It was what it forced the enemy to do. Allied infantry doctrine was rewritten around one goal: get a smoke grenade to the MG42 position before it could fire. Entire assault plans were structured around neutralizing a single 2-man German crew. A weapon that forces the enemy to redesign their entire tactics around it isn't just lethal, it's dominant. But the MG42 could only hold ground. Number 5 was the weapon that took it. Number 5, the main battle tank. In 1939, a tank was a support weapon. By 1945, the army that controlled the most tanks controlled the WEAR. The T-34, the Sherman, the Panther, the Tiger. These were not just machines, they were the reason entire nations could be conquered or liberated in weeks. At Kursk in 1943, over 6,000 tanks clashed in a single engagement. The outcome decided the Eastern Front, and the Eastern Front decided the war. The Sherman was not the most powerful tank on the field, but America built 49,000 of them. Germany built 1,347 Tigers. Industrial mass production defeated engineering perfection. The tank that was everywhere beat the tank that was perfect, but tanks needed fuel, armies needed supply lines, and something in the Atlantic was trying to cut them. Number 4, the submarine. This weapon never fired a single shot at a soldier. It nearly won the war anyway. Between 1939 and 1942, German U-boats sank over 1,600 Allied ships in the Atlantic. Not warships, supply ships, carrying food, fuel, weapons, and ammunition from America to Britain. Winston Churchill said the U-boat peril was the only thing that ever truly frightened him. Not the Blitz, not the fall of France, not the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. The submarines. Because Churchill understood something that most people still don't, Britain couldn't fight without food. Britain couldn't fight without fuel. And in the darkest months of 1942, German submarines were sinking ships faster than Allied shipyards could replace them. If the Battle of the Atlantic had gone the other way, there would have been no D-Day, no liberation of Europe. The war in the West would have ended not with a German defeat, but with a British strangulation. The submarine didn't need to face the enemy directly. It just needed to cut the thread that held everything else together. The Allies survived the Atlantic, but crossing it required owning the sky. Number 3, the fighter aircraft. Before you can invade a beach, you have to own the sky above it. The Spitfire, the P-51 Mustang, the Bf-109, these were the weapons that made everything else on this list possible or impossible. On D-Day, Allied forces landed in Normandy under a canopy of air superiority so complete that German troops on the beaches reported seeing thousands of Allied aircraft, but not a single German one. That did not happen by accident. In 1943, the P-51 Mustang received a British Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, extending its range enough to escort bombers all the way to Berlin and back. Before that, American bombers suffered 25% casualty rates per mission. After that, German fighter interception dropped by 80%. One engine swap made the entire strategic bombing campaign possible. Without AIR superiority, D-Day was impossible. Without D-Day, the war in Europe continues indefinitely. The fighter plane was not a weapon that killed people. It was the weapon that made the decisive blow possible. Number 2, the strategic bomber. The fighter controlled the air. The strategic bomber used that air to destroy everything below it. The B-17 Flying Fortress, the B-29 Super Fortress, the Lancaster. These were not tactical weapons. They were built for a single purpose, not to kill soldiers, but to destroy the factories that armed them. By 1944, Allied fleets of over 1,000 bombers at a time were targeting German oil refineries, rail yards, and weapons factories in systematic campaigns designed to make the Nazi war machine unable to function. By early 1945, German oil production had fallen by 90%. Tanks without fuel became steel boxes. Aircraft without fuel became expensive targets on airfields. Entire German armies ran out of ammunition because the trains carrying it had been destroyed weeks earlier. The strategic bomber did not defeat Germany's army. It starved Germany's army to death. But all of this, the tanks, the submarines, the bombers, the rifles, becomes irrelevant when you reach number 1. Because number 1 did not end the war, it ended the ERA. Number 1, the atomic bomb. On August 6, 1945, a single aircraft dropped a single weapon over a single city. The bomb weighed 9,700 pounds. It contained 141 pounds of uranium. It ended 140,000 lives, not over months of bombing campaigns, not over years of ground warfare. In seconds. The Little Boy bomb released energy equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT. The fireball reached temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun. Within seconds, the center of Hiroshima, a city of 350,000 people, was gone. 3 days later, a second bomb fell on Nagasaki. The Japanese Empire, which had fought for 4 years and promised to resist an Allied invasion to the last man, surrendered within a week. The atomic bomb sits at number 1 not because it was the most effective weapon in conventional terms. Many weapons on this list killed more people across the full length of the war. It sits at number 1 because of what it changed. Before August 6, 1945, war had a logic. Armies met armies, navies met navies. Nations fought until one side could no longer sustain the fight. After August 6th, that logic no longer existed. One airplane, one bomb, one city gone. The atomic bomb didn't just end World War II, it made a third world war between nuclear powers unthinkable, because the cost of losing was not defeat. It was extinction. Every weapon on this list was designed to win a war. The atomic bomb made winning one impossible to survive. Every weapon before it changed the battlefield. The atomic bomb changed humanity. That is why it stands alone.